Imagine. One night in the distant past, the sky wasn't just filled with stars. There was something bigger, brighter, and more terrifying. Exactly 2.8 million years ago, human history took a major leap. But not because of evolution, not because of nature, but because of something that fell from the sky. And since then we've never been the same. The traces that were supposed to explain our origins have disappeared. The fossils found don't fit the theory. The researchers who uncovered them have vanished without a trace. Is all this just a coincidence? Or is there a greater truth being deliberately hidden? In this story we'll uncover the past. A dark, forgotten, and quite possibly non-human era. Watch until the end, and if you think this is just fiction, or if you think you've seen something unexplainable, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. A dry wind swept across the plains of East Africa. Beneath the searing sun, the expanse of the savanna lay serene, as if concealing the secrets of the past buried within its soil. Years passed, and this land bore silent witness to events barely recorded in human history. In 2013, a young archaeologist named Elias Mwandu was digging near the Awash River Valley in Ethiopia. This place is known as the cradle of mankind. But that day, Elias wasn't looking for just any fossil. He was following the clues of an old manuscript passed down from his grandfather, who had allegedly discovered something too terrifying to describe. When his shovel hit something hard, Elias stopped. Slowly, he cleared the dirt around him. It wasn't an ordinary skull. This one was long, with oversized eye sockets, and a strange curve at the temple that didn't fit the structure of Homo habilis or Australopithecus. He shivered. Something inside him knew this discovery would change everything. A week later, an international team of scientists arrived. Carbon and soil sediment analysis confirmed something startling. The fossils dated to 2.8 million years ago. Much older than modern humans, yet possessing features far too advanced for their time. The report was never officially published. The archives vanished. Elias vanished without a trace on his way back to Addis Ababa. But a copy of his findings on a small USB stick was found by a French mystery writer, Marc Delarue, who then investigated it secretly for years. Marc noticed a pattern. Whenever a prehistoric discovery didn't fit the narrative of human evolution, the report was withdrawn, the researcher disappeared, or was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The world seemed to be shielded from a terrifying truth. What really happened to humans 2.8 million years ago? Why did history feel like pieces of a puzzle being deliberately hidden? In a hallway of an old library in Lyon, Marc opened Elias's last handwritten notes. On the very last page, written in trembling letters, it wasn't humans who evolved, but something came and forced us into what we are. They never left. Marc froze. The words sent a shiver down his spine. And it was all just beginning. The sky over East Africa was never the same. 2,800,000 years ago, the night wasn't just filled with stars. There was another light. Moved. Split the sky. Ancient tribes who didn't yet know language could only stand there, watching a great fireball streak across the sky. It didn't burn like a meteor. It didn't fall to the ground. But it remained still, floating, glowing a silvery blue. In a low valley now called the Rift Valley, a group of living creatures huddled. They weren't human as they are today, but they weren't entirely animals either. They walked on two legs, had grasping fingers, but their faces were still dominated by instinct. They were early forms of Homo, perhaps Homo rudolfensis, perhaps something yet unnamed. And that night they saw something instinct couldn't explain. Shining creatures descending from the sky. The creatures were tall, slender, their bodies emitting a faint glow like cold dew. They didn't speak, but those early humans felt voices inside their heads, commands, images, fear. Time had passed strangely since that night. Plants died. The sky turned red. Animals began to move away from the area. And some of those early humans disappeared. But one returned, different. He carried eyes that seemed to know too much. His face was smoother. His skull structure more like that of modern humans. He was no longer with his group but formed his own. They began to make tools. They began to hunt, not just defend. The transformation was too rapid, too abrupt to be called evolution. Mark, in his growing research, discovered a rock carving in the Kenyan plains. A strange symbol, a circle with two parallel lines vertically piercing it. He found the same symbol in remote caves in Peru, and even on ice rocks in Greenland. There was no connection between these civilizations. But the symbol kept appearing. He realized, what happened 2.8 million years ago wasn't local. It was global, maybe even more than global. And when Mark opened Elias's USB drive again, he found a hidden file, a short 11-second video. The blurry image showed an aerial view of the savanna landscape, then a loud noise, and a large creature with elongated eyes, moving through the trees. He rewound the video over and over again, and at the 10th-second mark, a hoarse voice whispered in an unknown language. But one word emerged clearly, as if it were being recorded directly at him. The beginning is not the beginning. Mark couldn't sleep that night, because he knew that whatever had descended from the sky long ago might still be watching. Autumn enveloped France in a cold fog. Mark Delarue no longer left the house. In his dim study, the walls were lined with maps, notes, fossils, and blurry photographs from around the world. Everything pointed to one conclusion. But his brain refused to accept the truth that was slowly forming from the scattered fragments of history. He found similarities in skull shape between a 2.8 million-year-old fossil and modern-day sightings of creatures claimed to be extraterrestrial. But the evidence was too subtle, too hidden, as if some force had deliberately erased its traces from human consciousness. Behind one of the photographs, Mark hid an old letter from 1937, written by a German anthropologist who disappeared in the Nubian desert. It described an encounter with a strange creature with pale skin and black eyes, who said in a language only the mind could understand, "You are not the first experiment." Mark realized something. Humans did not develop alone. There was intervention. Someone came. They shaped, accelerated, and even wiped out hominin groups deemed to have failed. Evolution is not simply a product of nature, but of design, monitored, controlled, and retested. Humans have long believed that intelligence and civilization are the result of a long struggle. But what if it's all part of one grand program, and the beings who started it never left? In 2025, Mark embarked on his final expedition to the Elias discovery site, an area now closed by the Ethiopian government without official justification. But with the help of local contacts, Mark managed to infiltrate. In the middle of the night, as he dug through the dried soil, his hand touched a hard surface. But not a fossil, a metal object, curved, deeply buried in an ancient rock formation. He dug deeper. Then he heard a voice. Not the sound of nature, not the sound of a tool, but a voice that came directly from inside his head, in a language that wasn't a language. Observation ends. A new cycle begins. The sky above him suddenly changed. The clear sky now seemed to crack, as if reality itself were shifting. A silvery light descended from the sky. It wasn't like a shooting star. It didn't burn, didn't explode. Mark looked up. His face was pale, but his eyes were calm, as if he had finally understood the truth that had been hiding behind the fog of history. And in that light, Mark disappeared.